Imagine destroying an entire civilization just because you didn't get a wedding invitation. Meet Eris, the goddess of discord. She is basically the patron saint of drama. The story starts with a wedding. Not just any wedding, but the marriage of Peleus and Thetis, the future parents of Achilles. All the gods were invited. Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, everyone. Except Eris. Why? Because she ruins the vibe. Who wants discord at a wedding? Big mistake. Eris didn't get mad. She got creative. She showed up at the banquet hall, not to fight, but to drop off a gift. She rolled a single golden apple across the floor. On the apple, there was one word carved. Callisti, which means to the fairest. Now, if you throw a golden apple into a room full of narcissistic goddesses, what happens? Chaos. 3 goddesses immediately grabbed it. Hera, the queen, Athena, the smart one, and Aphrodite, the hot one. They started fighting. It's mine. No, I'm the fairest. They asked Zeus to judge. Zeus, being the only smart man in this story, said, "Absolutely not. I am not choosing between my wife, my daughter, and the goddess of love. That is a suicide mission." So they dumped the decision on a mortal shepherd boy named Paris. Bad idea. Paris was, how do I put this politely? A shallow idiot. The 3 goddesses appeared before him and offered bribes. Hera said, "Pick me, and I will make you king of Europe and Asia." Power. Athena said, "Pick me, and I will make you the greatest warrior in history." Wisdom and glory. Aphrodite loosened her robe and said, "Pick me, and I will give you the most beautiful woman in the world." Sex. Paris didn't care about power. He didn't care about war. He chose Aphrodite. He gave her the apple. The problem? The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen. And Helen was already married to the king of Sparta. By taking Helen, Paris started the Trojan War. Thousands died. Cities burned. Heroes fell. All because one goddess wasn't invited to a party. The lesson? Always send the invite, even to your toxic friends. They call Helen the face that launched 1,000 ships. It sounds romantic, right? But let's be real. This wasn't a romance novel. It was a disaster. And it all started with the most useless man in Greek mythology, Paris. After Aphrodite promised Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, Paris sailed to Sparta. The king of Sparta was Menelaus. Menelaus was a good guy. He welcomed Paris into his palace, gave him food, wine, and treated him like family. This is called Xenia, the sacred law of hospitality. You do not mess with Xenia. Zeus watches that stuff. But Paris didn't care. He only had eyes for the queen, Helen. Fun fact about Helen. She was the daughter of Zeus. Zeus seduced her mom in the form of a swan, so Helen actually hatched from an egg. Yes, the most beautiful woman in history came from an egg. Greek mythology is weird. While Menelaus left town to go to a funeral, Paris made his move. Depending on which version you believe, he either charmed Helen with Aphrodite's help, or he violently kidnapped her. Either way, they loaded Menelaus's gold and his wife onto a ship and ran away to Troy. When Menelaus came home and saw his wife was gone, and his money, he went nuclear. He didn't just call the police. He called his brother, Agamemnon. And they reminded every king in Greece of the oath of Tyndareus. Years ago, all of Helen's ex-boyfriends swore an oath to defend her husband. So, because one guy couldn't keep it in his pants, every major city in Greece had to go to war. Odysseus, Achilles, Ajax. They all got dragged into this mess. A fleet of 1,000 ships set sail for Troy. And what was Paris doing while the world prepared for war? He was chilling in his bedroom, polishing his armor, and looking in the mirror. Throughout the war, Paris was basically a coward. He preferred using a bow and arrow, a weapon for cowards in ancient Greek eyes, instead of a sword. Whenever things got tough, he would run away or get saved by Aphrodite. He is the definition of all talk, no action. Helen eventually grew to despise him, calling him weak. But by then, it was too late. The ships had landed, the slaughter had begun. If you think your dad is strict, be thankful he isn't Agamemnon. Agamemnon was the high king of the Greeks, the leader of the Trojan War. But he was also a monster. This is the story of Iphigenia, the girl who was sacrificed for a gust of wind. Here is the situation. The Greek fleet, 1,000 ships, was gathered at the port of Aulis, ready to sail to Troy. But the wind stopped blowing. For weeks, the sea was dead calm. The men were angry, hungry, and bored. Why? Because Agamemnon, being an arrogant idiot, had killed a sacred deer belonging to the goddess Artemis. He bragged, "I am a better hunter than the goddess." Artemis heard him, and she stopped the wind. The prophet Calchas gave Agamemnon the solution. To get the wind back, you must sacrifice your daughter Iphigenia to Artemis. A normal father would say, "Forget the war, I'm going home." Agamemnon said, "Okay, let's do it. But how do we get her here?" He came up with a lie so cruel it makes you sick. He wrote a letter to his wife, Clytemnestra, saying, "Bring Iphigenia to the camp immediately. The great hero Achilles wants to marry her before we leave." Achilles, by the way, knew nothing about this. His name was used as bait. Iphigenia arrived wearing her wedding dress, expecting a romantic ceremony. She walked down the aisle looking for her groom. Instead, she saw her father holding a knife. She saw an altar, not for a wedding, but for a slaughter. When she realized what was happening, she begged for her life. She cried, "Father, do not kill me before my time." But Agamemnon cared more about his reputation and his war than his own child. He gave the order. Depending on the version of the myth, she was either killed right there, or Artemis felt pity at the last second and replaced her with a deer, spiriting her away. But to her mother, Clytemnestra, the intent was clear. Agamemnon murdered their daughter for political gain. The wind returned. The ships sailed to Troy, but Agamemnon sealed his fate. 10 years later, when he returned home from the war, his wife was waiting, and she had a very sharp axe ready for him. Sing, goddess of the rage of Achilles. That's how the Iliad begins. It's not about the war. It's about one man's anger management issues. Meet Achilles, the greatest warrior Greece ever produced. He was fast, strong, and beautiful. He was basically a biological weapon made of muscle and arrogance. His backstory is famous. His mother, Thetis, a sea nymph, wanted him to be immortal. So, she dipped him as a baby into the river Styx. The magical water made his skin impenetrable. Swords bounced off him. Arrows broke on his chest. But Thetis made one mistake. She held him by his ankle. So, that one tiny spot on his heel remained dry and mortal. This is where we get the term Achilles' heel. But Achilles had another weakness that was much more dangerous: his ego. 9 years into the Trojan War, Achilles and the High King Agamemnon got into a fight. It wasn't over strategy. It was over a girl. Agamemnon, being a jerk, stole Achilles' war prize, a woman named Briseis. Achilles was insulted. His honor was stained. Did he challenge Agamemnon to a duel? No. Did he complain to HR? No, he did the most diva thing possible. He went on strike. He told the Greeks, "Good luck fighting Troy without me. I hope you all lose so you realize how important I am." He went back to his tent, sat down, and played his lyre. For days, he watched the Trojan army slaughter his own friends. The Greeks begged him to come back. They offered him gold, horses, and apologies. He said no. He wanted them to suffer. He was willing to let the entire army burn just to soothe his bruised ego. He only returned to the battlefield later for personal revenge, which we will cover on Saturday. Achilles teaches us a valuable lesson. Talent means nothing if your attitude is toxic. He might be a hero, but he was definitely a terrible team player. In a war filled with narcissists, cowards, and divas, there was one man who actually deserved the title of hero: Hector, the crown prince of Troy. Unlike his brother Paris, who spent the war polishing his hair in the bedroom, Hector was on the front lines every single day. He didn't want this war. He knew Paris was wrong to steal Helen. He famously told Paris, "You are a curse to your father and your city." But because he was a loyal brother and a protector of his people, he fought anyway. He was cleaning up the mess his family made. Hector gives us the most human moment in the Iliad. Before his final battle, he goes to say goodbye to his wife, Andromache, and his baby son. He is wearing his terrifying helmet with a horsehair crest. When he leans down to kiss his son, the baby starts crying, scared of the helmet. Hector doesn't get angry. He laughs, takes off the helmet, and picks up his son. He prays that his son will be a better man than he is. It is a heartbreaking reminder that he isn't just a killing machine. He is a father. But fate is cruel. Achilles eventually returns to the battlefield. We'll explain why tomorrow. And he is hunting for Hector. Hector knows he cannot win against the invincible Achilles. He considers running away. He considers negotiating. But in the end, he stands his ground. He faces the monster alone. The fight is brutal. Achilles, fueled by rage and divine armor, kills Hector. But death wasn't enough for Achilles. He tied Hector's dead body to the back of his chariot and dragged him through the dust, round and round the walls of Troy. Hector's parents watched from the walls, screaming in horror. It was the most disrespectful act in the entire war. But here is the truth. Achilles might be the winner of the fight, but Hector was the winner of the moral war. He died defending his home, his wife, and his child. He was the shield of Troy. And when he fell, the city fell with him. If you read the old history books, they will tell you Patroclus was Achilles' cousin or best friend. But if you read the Iliad closely, or if you have eyes, you know the truth. They were soulmates. And Patroclus was the only person who could control the rage of Achilles. Remember how Achilles was on strike? Sitting in his tent while the Greeks were dying? Well, Patroclus couldn't take it anymore. Unlike Achilles, Patroclus had empathy. He saw his friends burning, and it broke his heart. So he came up with a dangerous plan. He begged Achilles, "If you won't fight, at least let me borrow your armor. The Trojans are terrified of you. If they see your armor, they will run." Achilles agreed, but he gave one strict warning. "Push the Trojans back from the ships, but do not attack the walls of Troy. Come right back. Basically, don't be a hero, babe. Just scare them." Patroclus put on the legendary golden armor. He marched onto the battlefield, and it worked. The Trojans panicked. They thought the god of war had returned. Patroclus fought like a demon. He saved the ships. He killed incredible warriors. But then, he caught main character syndrome. He forgot Achilles' warning. He started chasing the Trojans all the way back to the city walls. He wanted to take Troy himself. But he wasn't a demigod. He was just a brave man in a fancy suit. First, the god Apollo intervened and hit him from behind, knocking off his helmet. Then, Hector stepped in. Hector didn't know it was Patroclus. He thought he was fighting Achilles. He stabbed him in the belly. As Patroclus lay dying, he gasped out a prophecy. "You didn't kill me, Hector. Fate did. And guess what? Achilles is coming for you." When Achilles heard the news, he didn't just cry. He screamed so loud that horses fell to their knees. He covered himself in dirt. He stopped eating. His rage transformed from sulking diva to unstoppable monster. Patroclus died a hero, but his death signed the death warrant for Hector and the entire city of Troy. And in the end, Achilles asked for their ashes to be mixed together in the same urn. You know, just like roommates do. 10 years. That's how long the Greeks and Trojans fought. Achilles was dead. Hector was dead. Paris was dead. It was a stalemate. A bloody, useless stalemate. The Greeks were ready to quit. But Odysseus, the smartest man in the room, had one last crazy idea. "If we can't break down their walls," he said, "let's get them to invite us in." So, the Greeks built a massive wooden horse. They hid their best commandos inside the belly of the beast. Then, the rest of the Greek army burned their own camp, hopped on their ships, and sailed away, just behind a nearby island to hide. When the Trojans woke up, they saw an empty beach and a giant horse. They also found one Greek spy left behind, a guy named Sinon. Sinon was a professional liar. He spun a sob story. "The Greeks left me to die. And this horse? It's a peace offering to the goddess Athena. If you bring it inside your city, Troy will never fall." Some people warned them. The priest Laocoon said, "I don't trust Greeks, even when they bring gifts." He threw a spear at the horse and it sounded hollow. But then, Poseidon sent 2 giant sea serpents to eat Laocoon and his sons. The Trojans took this as a sign. "Oops, the gods want us to take the horse." They dragged the massive idol into the city. They celebrated. They drank. They danced. They thought the war was over. But as the city fell into a drunken sleep, the trapdoor on the horse's belly opened. Odysseus and his men rappelled down silently. They killed the guards. They opened the main gates. And the entire Greek fleet, which had sailed back in the dark, flooded into the city. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. The Greeks burned the city to the ground. They killed the men, enslaved the women, and threw Hector's baby son from the walls. By morning, the great city of Troy was nothing but ash. Odysseus won the war, but the brutality of that night angered the gods. And that is why it took him another 10 years to get home. The lesson? There is no such thing as a free lunch, especially in war.